So now we're going to be solving the exact same problem in a different way. We have one class for the gradebook and one class for the student. The student class that I wrote here is pretty similar to the one that was in the worked example, but I chose to use an array list for the scores instead of an array. Who needs the pain of the array? So to read in a student with a scanner, one reads in the first name and the last name, and then as long as there's scores, one just reads in the scores. So in this case, the student is constructed from the scanner. That's perhaps mildly unusual, but it's quite handy when your program is driven by input from a file. Then we have a method here to get the student name. And so since I concatenated the first and last name here, that'll automatically do the right thing with the format for this assignment. And then I have a method for computing the score. And that one will be called later. If there was only one score, then get it. And otherwise, now here I've again resorted to helper methods sum and minimum. And I've made those private methods because the user of the student class shouldn't be bothered with them. So, and they again compute the minimum and the sum over here in the usual way. Notice that these are not static methods. They don't have any parameters. They simply compute the sum and the minimum of the student scores looking up this instance variable. Now in the gradebook, a gradebook has students, so we collect the students in an array list. We read it again from input, constructing the students, and then as long as there's more input, we just construct a new student and add it to the list of students in the gradebook. Now then I have a method here that computes the high score. So this one now computes the maximum, but the maximum of what? Previously in the static solution, we computed the maximum of an array list. Here I have to compute the maximum of these students, and each time I have to know what that actually means. So when I have a student object, I need to call getScore on it. So that's kind of like what you had in the second midterm, where you had to apply these algorithms to different classes. Then here we have how to print the gradebook, and so we just go through all of the students, and if the score is the max, which I've pre-computed here by calling high score, then we print the asterisk, and at any time we print the name and the score. So what you now have is you have all of the work distributed over two classes, and so you can see that the stuff that's gradebook specific, that deals with high scores and marking them, that's in one class, that's in the gradebook class, and the stuff that's student specific, such as dropping the minimum score from this list, that's in the student class. And so all the work is still there, and the amount of code is probably not less, it's actually slightly more because of the coordination and encapsulation. But it's now distributed. You could give the student class to one programmer, the gradebook class to another programmer. They don't have to have much communication with each other. They each can do their thing, and later you can compose a solution out of the work of these two people. So it's easier for a manager to distribute the workload when you use classes. You can test each of these separately. And in fact, if you look at how I asked you to do this, you were first supposed to do the student class without doing the gradebook class. So the testing flow is easier. And so it's these kind of benefits that you get from object orientation. It's not that you can program more things with objects than without, but the scheduling of the workload, the testing, the organization just becomes much easier. And also, of course, each class is easy to understand in its own right, whereas when you have a program that consists of a tangled mess of static methods, it's usually quite hard to understand. So that initial cost of making a class, you have to make a constructor, you have to figure out what are the private instance variables, you have to even decide what classes you use. That is extra work, there's no doubt about it, but in a larger project, that work pays back.